Messy compromise or promise delivered? That's the question RegWatch first posed late last year following the federal government's introduction of Senate Bill S-5, Canada's new federal vaping regulations. Today, opposition to Bill S-5 is growing as opponents charge the legislation is turning out to be less of a compromise and more of a mess. Some say the bill is workable, but only with major changes, while others just want the legislation scrapped altogether. In late August, S-5 opponents secured support for a House of Commons e-petition calling for the federal government to halt Bill S-5 in order to create a fair and logical category for vaping products apart from tobacco. In just over a month, 7,000 Canadians have signed the e-petition, proving a measure of support for what amounts to scrapping the bill. It's a big ask. For one, Bill S-5, which began life in the Senate, has already cleared the upper chamber and is expected to move quickly through the House of Commons this fall. Also, Health Canada is fast-tracking stakeholder consultation for its regulatory proposals to ensure industry regulations will be ready once Bill S-5 receives royal assent. Add it all up, Bill S-5 is a freight train racing towards Terminus Station, but can it be stopped? Bill S-5 opponents say yes, the legislation could and should be stopped. They believe Health Canada's decision to regulate vaping products alongside tobacco products within the new Tobacco and Vaping Products Act is a fatal flaw in the government's strategy to win the war against tobacco-related disease and death. From the outset, vaping advocates called on the Government of Canada to create a brand new product category uniquely for tobacco harm reduction products, which would also enjoy its own purposefully built legislative framework. Harm reduction advocates feared if vaping were to be shackled to tobacco in any legislative way, it would be impossible to define and promote vaping as a safer alternative to smoking. This fear now seems well-founded. Despite years of public consultation, stakeholder collaboration, and expert testimony given at both the HESA and SOCI committee hearings, Bill S-5 today remains unmistakably tobacco regulation. In Bill S-5, the language that governs vaping all but mirrors the language governing tobacco, including harsh restrictions on free speech and sharing of information with the public, a prohibition on comparing products along a continuum of health risk, and the imposition of massive fines and criminal penalties. Many advocates were hopeful that by this point in the process, Health Canada would have taken steps to incorporate vaping as a tool for harm reduction somewhere in the bill, or at the very least soften some of the disparaging language that enshrines vaping as a health hazard. Yet despite numerous statements by Health Canada that acknowledge vaping as a likely less harmful alternative to tobacco, neither this statement nor its sentiment appear anywhere in the legislation.
I think what Bill S-5 aims to do is really to balance the issue of allowing adults, particularly adult smokers, legal access to vaping products as a likely less harmful alternative to tobacco products.
Could you clarify a little bit that likely less addictive or less harmful? What's the wording in the position there exactly?
The position is likely less harmful, and the idea here is that we know that tobacco products kill 1 in 2 long-term users. The evidence right now is indicating that that same level of harm is not evident in vaping products.
That was Susie McDonald, the former Director General of the Tobacco Control Directorate at Health Canada, in an interview with RegWatch conducted early this year. Her statement that vaping products are a likely less harmful alternative to tobacco products is difficult to square with the stated purpose of Bill S-5, which is the purpose of the act is to enhance the public awareness of the health hazards of using vaping products. It's really quite astonishing. Health Canada states smoking kills 1 in 2 long-term users and acknowledges the same level of harm is not evident in vaping products. All the while, it shepherds through Bill S-5 with the stated goal of misinforming Canadians of this potentially life-saving fact. Joining us today to discuss the growing pushback to Bill S-5 is David Sweanor. Sweanor is a world-renowned tobacco control expert and public health activist. He's also a lawyer and adjunct professor of law at the University of Ottawa. David, thanks again for coming on our show. You've spent the last 30 years on the front lines in the battle against smoking. What's your position on Bill S-5?
Well, I mean, if I had my way, I'd say start over, because what they've done is they've taken our tobacco control legislation, which I was very involved in getting going here for decades. The legislation we've had at cigarettes, and they've just tried to fit in the vaping as if it's the same sort of thing. So it's like saying we've got this disease and we've got a vaccine, but we better treat the vaccine the same as the disease. Well, no. I mean, what we're trying to do is improve health of Canadians. I mean, Health Canada has a mandate. It has a statement of what it's trying to do, which is improve the health of Canadians.
David, I do think Health Canada believes it's meeting their mandate and that Bill S-5 is a pragmatic solution to the vaping conundrum.
Well, I think if you're being pragmatic, you have to start from something that is based on some semblance of truth, of understanding, of good science. You know, if you look at the regulations that Health Canada has proposed, if you look at what they said when they introduced S-5 to begin with, you know, what were they telling us? You know, here we have the Royal College of Physicians in the UK telling us that vaping is likely to be at least 95% less hazardous than smoking. You know, if you smoke, if you can switch to vaping, that's fantastic. You know, we have Health Canada coming out and saying it's likely less harmful. What do you mean it's likely less harmful? In what they've just put out with the regulations. You know, they talk about, yes, there's a threat from these products, but there's also opportunity. How do they see the opportunity? Well, to quote, they say, the opportunity presented by vaping products is that they may provide adult smokers with a less harmful alternative. Well, if there was a prize for understatement, I mean, that would certainly be in the running.
And David, as understating as that statement is, it's miles apart from the language in the legislation, which simply states over and over again that vaping is a health hazard.
The way that bureaucracy works, the way politics works, you've got people who are trying to find middle ground. You've got a lot of people who I think very unfortunately, tragically, have an abstinence-only view about these things. They see nicotine use as sin. You know, the way that they look at a smoker is a way that some fire and brimstone minister would look at a sinner. They don't want them to do it. And they think it's okay to mislead somebody, to torture them with information that they don't want. And that's not public health.
David, you mentioned information. There's two really big problems RegWatch sees with the bill. One is the stated purpose, which is to further the public's understanding that vaping is a health hazard. And two, to prevent anyone from correcting that misbelief by criminalizing the sharing of information, which might lead a person to believe that vaping is a safer alternative to smoking. Now, granted, Health Canada does say it plans to approve a small number of statements, kind of like reverse health warnings. But considering the bill's derogatory language and Health Canada's equivocations on potential harm, I think it's a big ask of vapers to just say, trust us.
Why on earth would they want to have a provision saying you can't tell smokers about less hazardous products? We'll put you in jail if you do. So you change things like that. With vaping, rather than saying we will decide what you can tell people, you recognize there's a reason that we developed law the way that we did, that we didn't take the Soviet approach of everything's forbidden unless it's specifically allowed. We say, you can do whatever you want, there's liberty, but if you do something that's illegal, misleading, rip people off, etc., we come down on you like a ton of bricks. You know, we can do that sort of stuff. Let's not protect the cigarette industry, because what we're hearing is from people who say, we're so afraid because of things that we think the cigarette companies got away with. I mean, stuff I was going after them for a long time. We're so afraid they might try something like that again and deceive people that our solution is, we'll deceive people. I mean, that's not a solution.
David, final question. If you could make one change to Bill S-5 so that it would pass the Sweanor test, what would that change be?
The one thing would be, I would rewrite this bill to be consistent with what's worked with public health for over 100 years. There's no sense breaking that precedent now and going with something that is inconsistent with what has historically worked. Let's give it our best shot. And if we don't succeed, it isn't for want of trying. If we do succeed, we have set another enormous precedent. And the worldwide significance of that, you know, is almost beyond imagination. When we look at how many lives are on the line, how many people are suffering unnecessarily, we know the solution, and we shouldn't back away from seeking it.
Well, that's it for this edition of RegWatch. Before you head off, please like us on Facebook and don't forget to follow us on Twitter. For RegulatorWatch.com, I'm Brent Stafford.